Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine Podcast Radio. You're about to listen to a new Redefining Technology podcast. Standing on 2 feet, having dexterous hands, developing a language that allows us to communicate, and the ability to understand abstract concepts. These are all part of the equation of humanity. Still, it is the capacity to create tools and advance the technology that has allowed us to thrive on this planet, and maybe on others. Knowledge is power, now more than ever. Blue Lava is the first business platform for CISOs to manage their security program. Blue Lava guides security leaders to effectively measure, optimize, and communicate their security program with confidence and ease in one platform. Learn more at bluelava.net.
Devo unlocks the full value of machine data for the world's most instrumented enterprises. The Devo Data Analytics Platform addresses the explosion in volume of machine data and the crushing demands of algorithms and automation. Learn more at devo.com.
Marco.
Sean.
I found something new.
Something new?
Something new.
Something old? Are you getting married? What's going on?
Something blue.
Something blue.
I found the internet. It's this new fandangled thing that helps us communicate and do buy stuff, I think.
Where did you find it?
Big shopping cart. I found it on the internet.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah,
I found it.
It was right there, and everything I read there, I believe as well.
Yeah. I found it in the garden. Go figure. Of all places, I was gardening, taking care of flowers.
Did it bite you?
It bite me. Yeah.
Yeah.
A bee came and sting me. And,
was it a sting or a bite? Either way, it hurts, I guess.
It was a sting. It hurts, and it could have been a malware. I don't know.
Ooh, we're going there.
No, we're not going there, Sean. I know you want to go cybersecurity, but we're not going there.
You traded your privacy during the gardening event. I don't know.
Yeah, for some honey. That's what I did.
There you go.
Okay, this is starting funny as usual because we like to be silly, but this conversation, I'm very excited about it because it's very philosophical and there is technology involved and there is, plants as well, animals and a lot of things. And we spoke very briefly about this with Diana Kelly on one of the, through the Tech Vine show that we had. And we got fascinated by this book and we invited the author. And guess what?
He accepted.
Yeah, go figure.
The internet worked in our favor.
It did. We sent a pigeon and it worked. Anyway, enough with this funny talking. The book title.
On a serious note, before you get to the book title, I caught the dystopian. Well, the way it's put is utopian is not possible, right? So I'm very curious to go there. I'm just going to tease that out as you dig into this, Marco, because we always talk about utopia and dystopia and that there is an opportunity for good. I'm not so certain.
Well, we have the right person to ask the question. It's Justin Smith. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, we were very excited. I think we already spoke and chat way too much, Sean and I. So let's talk about you, who you are, and the book that you wrote that we're referring to is called "The Internet Is Not What You Think It Is: A History, a Philosophy, a Warning." So there you go with what Sean was referring to. So Justin, a little bit about yourself.
Oh, let's see where to start. I am American by birth. I've lived in Paris for about 10 years. And I am, among other things, a professor in the Department of History and Philosophy of Science at the University of Paris, though originally I am trained in philosophy. But this book, like most of my more recent writing, is inflected by a long interest in the history of science. And I wrote my most recent book, The Internet Is Not What You Think It Is, as a kind of fusion of two different identities I have, or I put on two hats at the same time. And, in addition to my academic work, I'm also rather present on the internet itself, and I write a lot of essays and philippics and tirades, or what are commonly called these days rants. I don't like that word, but one of them that I wrote in 2018, the web version of the Point magazine, was an angry, desperate essay called "It's All Over," in which I bemoaned the loss of the world that I first knew, and I identified the principal culprit in its loss as the rise of algorithmic structuring of our social reality, the paradigm instance, but not the sole instance of which is social media. And so then this was the closest thing to a viral hit I'd ever had. And as it circulated, a number of people suggested I squeeze a book out of it. And so as I was trying to figure out how to do that, I kind of brought together two of my basic kind of approaches. One is the essayistic investigation, and the other is my more academic, scholarly expertise, if you will, in the history and philosophy of science. So what I try to do is tell the long story of the internet, going back in most chapters several centuries, but also in the particular chapter 2 that was excerpted in Wired, going back several hundred millions of years, and considering networks in nature as well as antecedent to our technological networks.
Fascinating, and I think, like I said at the beginning before we start recording, we could probably go a lot longer than what we go, because it sounds you're taking a stab at this issue or this problem, this vision that you have from many different angles. And we started making fun with the garden, because that article is about Mother Nature's pretty much has been doing what we're doing on the internet, or maybe without the bad things, for a very long time. So how do you start with that? It seems to me there is the world seen philosophically is a synergy of everything that is composed in nature, even the universe itself. So start from as far as you want to start.
Yeah. Well, I guess one of the morals of the tale I tell in the book is that the history of technology is not what you think it is, in part because it involves typically a long prehistory where we don't have what the tech people like to call proof of concept, right? But I like to criticize that term, mostly because for a philosopher, look, if you have the concept already, you have the proof of the concept, namely the fact that you have the concept. It doesn't have to be realized in a physical substratum in order to be proven as a concept, right? So one way of thinking of my argument is that the concept of the internet existed already as a concept long before we had the actual internet, right? And it came together through several different strands of development over the course of several centuries. I see some particularly significant moments in the 1600s when Leibniz and Pascal and other figures develop reckoning engines and are at the same time interested in conceptualizing ways of connecting their reckoning engines across large distances and developing some sort of telecommunication, even though the actual elements only start to come together in the 19th century. And it's in the 19th century that we get the working analytical engine of Charles Babbage and Ada Lovelace. We get telegraphy in the middle of the century. And by the end of the century, we have people telecommunicating all over the place, right? And we start to have really actual kind of practical use of these tools that have been conceptualized for a long time. So then the question is, how long? Like, how far back can you really push it? And I can cite examples from ancient Greece, from antiquity, where people are talking about giant listening saucers that they'll use to listen in on conversations on the other side of the globe, things like that. And so it's clear that there was, just given the way nature works, an available concept of telecommunication already, likely as long as people have been looking at nature with their anatomically modern brains, even though we only have the first expressions of it in antiquity. So that's why then in the chapter excerpted in Wired, I wanted to just push it as absolutely far back as we can go, and think about the evolutionary history of our species and of other species as essentially a history of telecommunication, right? And there are some cases where it's easy to do, like with sperm whales, for example. Researchers tell us today that when a sperm whale clicks in the Pacific Ocean, it's quite likely that its conspecifics can hear it in the Atlantic or the Indian Ocean. So that's real telecommunication, right? Elephants communicate with seismic vibrations by stomping over several kilometers. So that's telecommunication too. If you go down to the lower levels of the scale of being and you look at the plant kingdom, there's similarly widespread chemical signaling. And the famous example that was very popularized some maybe 5 or 6 years ago is of mycorrhizal networks connecting the roots of trees of the same species, so that it looks like you've got two separate trees far apart in the forest. Actually, they're sending signals back and forth to each other all the time, and helping each other out with deliveries of chemical packets and so on. So this is just kind of standard fare in the natural world. And I wanted to, again, put that in continuity with our own technologies, and to look at our idea that our technologies are something distinct as a form of self-flattery, right?
Yeah, and for me, I mean, that's fantastic history, and yeah, my mind's just blown. Obviously, I've heard a few of those, but I guess what I'm curious to know, I mean, you use the word help in there, trees helping each other.
Oh, yeah.
And I presume the communication amongst the whales is either to find each other to mate, or to share information about food, or whatever. There's a good place to hibernate, or to hang out during the winter.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, where does it go wrong with the humans? Because I don't know, do whales have telecommunication bullying?
I think in the case of whales, it differs species to species, and it actually remains rather mysterious in some cases, especially with not with clicks, but with like blue whale so-called song, it's an open question why they're doing it exactly. And there's significant evidence that to some extent they're doing it for fun, right? Or because they like to, for the same reason we chat with each other, right? And that's also, I think, significant, and that's unlikely to be what's going on in the case of the mycorrhizal networks connecting trees, right? I don't know if trees enjoy themselves. I think it's, but for the sake of argument, let's say they don't, right? In any case, what goes wrong? I mean, in a sense, the book is called "The Internet is Not What You Think It Is," and I think I mean that at two different levels at once. And one is the level I've already made explicit, right? The internet is not what you think it is, in the sense that really technology is not what you think it is, or the technological versus natural divide is not so clear when we start to press at it. The other sense in which the internet is not what you think it is the sense in which it is in its concrete current stage of development, presenting to itself to us under false pretenses. And let me explain a bit here. Sometimes I like to say, for the concrete actual internet, as opposed to the internet as a concept, we can divide its history into two chapters. One of the chapters extends from about 1678 to about, I don't know, sometime between 2011 and 2015. It's hard to say when. 1678 is when Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz develops the reckoning engine and conceptualizes the possibility of information processing and information networks. First part of the last decade is the moment where social media transform. And I lived through this transformation, and I can confirm that I experienced it in this way, from something that connects us and brings us closer together, as Mark Zuckerberg still claims of Facebook, into something that is an engine of hostility, disinformation, misrepresentation, and ultimately the algorithmic preference for things that are stated in the most extreme or unproductive way possible. So what happened was something like, and obviously I'm simplifying here, and obviously also you know the story, in the aughts, we used to have fire hose style newsfeed, where we would see posts within our community in the order they were made, and that was it. At some point, we started to see algorithmic boosting for certain posts based on inscrutable, mysterious AI-based principles. And by the middle of the last century, this was causing all sorts of chaos in the for global stability, right? And literally kind of bulldozing social reality as we had known it. And so it's also not what you think it is, then, in that it's not just a natural outgrowth of what we do as human beings, but it's also now, in its current manifestation, a distortion, you might say, a perversion of what we do as human beings, because we come to it and expect it to bring us together and enable us to communicate with one another, to deliberate with one another over tough decisions. But what it actually is something more like a deliberation-themed video game where you rack up points, except you don't call them points, you call them likes or faves or retweets or followers, right? Nonetheless, its essential nature is that of a video game. And when that's your only, the best thing going in terms of neutral public space to talk about serious problems, then you don't really have a public space at all, right?
Mhm.
And democracy needs a public space. So it's also not what you think it is in that sense then.
Yeah.
And this includes all the sub-problems like mobbing and virtue signaling and cancellation and everything else we know about.
Yeah. So I see this. I see like what you mentioned and where Sean was going is what you do with it. Right?
Yeah.
And well, I'm going to stick to what it is, because in many of our conversation, when we talk about robotics, digital artificial intelligence, virtual reality, one of the takes that I like the most, that I actually support, is that all the technology is an augmentation
Yeah.
of us being human. So I really clicked when I was reading your example of the web and the spider, for example. It's not part of the spider. It's not connected, but it is part of his life, his evolution, is what he needs to perceive the world. So in a way, philosophically speaking, it's always been there. And I think that's what you're going with, is like this communication. We're using technology once we reach that, but this desire, this predisposition to create this internet, it's always been there. Am I correct if I can wrap it in?
Sure. Yeah, that's part of it. And of course, the example of the spider, that casts a web and then sits in the center of it, and then detects vibrations that signal that a victim has fallen into the outer edges of the web. This is really interesting because, the spider needs it, can't live without it, but it's also usually not taken, the web itself, not taken to be part of its sensory apparatus, strictly speaking. Now, in philosophy, for some years, there's been a tendency that's sometimes called the extended mind hypothesis by philosophers like Andy Clark, who want to see how much we can push the idea that there's no way to limit our mental activity, including all of our experiences, to something that goes inside our head. We are by definition extended both out into our bodies, but then once you include the body, also out into the milieu we interact with, right? And so the spider then would be very much literally extended out into its web. Now, the difference between the spider and us, or between the sperm whales and us, you might think, is that, well, we just started networking, right? Whereas as long as this spider has existed in its evolutionary history, it's been using its web in this way. And that's kind of true, but what I wanted to suggest is that, well, in fact, if you look at the way humans have been conducting themselves over the centuries, if you were a member of the early modern Republic of Letters in Europe and you received a letter and you read what your friend in another country in Europe had said, you would not necessarily be as attuned to the lag time, to the delay that we would think of as if we received a letter today, right? Our friend would probably email us several times over the course of the delivery of the letter to say, hey, there's a letter on its way. Did you get it yet?
Yeah,
hey,
and then call you too, to be sure you got the text.
Right. But if you don't have all of those other kind of circumventions of the course of the letter, then when you get it, it feels simultaneous, right?
Yep.
So even if you have to walk across the distance yourself to deliver a message, this is still, you have like degree zero of technological development. You still have this abstract kind of mental field of your network, of a simultaneous cohabitation of the same spatiotemporally diffused community, right? And so then, in some sense, that our new technology makes new things possible. But as Sean said a moment ago, in another sense, what it also does is just kind of augments what we already, the way we already conducted ourselves. But of course, I mean, ever since Aristotle, there's a basic distinction in what you might call the philosophy of technology between augmentative technologies and, I forget what he calls it exactly, distortive, you might say. That's not the word he used. I should remember this. The idea being that there are some technologies, like, say, I think the example he uses is irrigation, right, where water flows, right, and that's something it's going to be doing in any case. To create a ditch for it to flow in for your irrigation purposes is just to kind of help water along, doing what it does in a direction that favors your own interests. Distortive technologies are ones that kind of force nature to do, in scare quotes, what it doesn't want to do, right? And you might, I mean, where to draw the line is a difficult one. We don't think today that nature actually wants to do anything. We still tend to think that growing a human ear on the back of a mouse is kind of pushing nature in a direction it wouldn't be inclined to go otherwise, or maybe splitting the atom, or any number of other examples from technology. So in a sense, the philosophy of technology, especially now, especially with the rise of AI, really needs to think about the difference between augmentation and distortion, I think. And it's an objectively hard question, and there's always going to be disagreement, but we still need to think about it.
Yeah, and so many questions in my mind. I want to go to the evolution, because you talked about it in the sense of communications and a place or a way for us to communicate and deliberate. But I see the internet and technology is expanding beyond that to where we're transporting ourselves to different places and experiencing new things, even if it's only in our mind.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, do other species evolve and try to make their communications channels multi-purpose and multifunctional like that?
Yeah, it's rather unlikely, right? I think, again, in some cases we just don't know, but we generally suppose that there's a lot less work of the imagination going on in most non-human instances of telecommunication. That is to say that there's less going on internally when an animal signals to another animal, or not to mention plants, right?
The reason I asked that, Justin, is because I feel that Mother Nature probably has some boundaries in place for a reason, and I'm wondering if it's that we're pushing the boundaries beyond what Mother Nature would want.
I mean, I think there's no question we are. I mean, we're definitely pushing the boundaries, and really, since the scientific revolution, that's been the basic spirit of scientific research, right? Like Francis Bacon in the 1600s said, forget about the squeamishness of the ancients. If we want to know nature, we have to violate nature, and we have to violate her, right? So this is a call to a metaphor of the sexual aggression against nature, and taking it, making it yours, and that's what science has been doing rather assertively for some centuries now. There's been wariness about this. There's been backlash, but we're also certainly pushing it to the limit. And there's, I think what the way this happens in particular now, today, no one is as aggressive as Francis Bacon was, but at the same time, I think, we recognize that that AI could develop in directions we don't want it to go, but we also know that our competitors are developing their AI, or China is developing its AI, so we need to get the best AI fast. So the competitive nature of technological development leaves little room for moral quandaries or anxiety about the direction this could all develop in. And I see this in particular when I read scholarship in so-called tech ethics or AI ethics, where there's very little kind of questioning of the whole big picture technological reality we've constructed. And people working in AI ethics focus, or tech ethics more generally speaking, focus on very narrow problems like, what kind of trolley problem solutions should we program into self-driving cars and stuff like this. And that's because this is being driven by tech companies who want self-driving cars, right? So we're definitely pushing things to a limit, and it is rather reckless in ways that people have seen for a long time. I mean, in 1962, Norbert Wiener, the founder of cybernetics, already said, look, you might think you're just teaching your machines to play chess, but they're going to jump the fence, right? And when they jump the fence, who knows what they're going to start learning? So it's and how this is going to come back and take a vengeance on us. So this has been clear for a long time, but that hasn't slowed us down. Right?
Switch from a game of chess to a game of Risk.
Yeah.
A
exactly.
game of thermonuclear war.
Exactly. Like
that was games.
That was exactly Wiener's fear, that chess is just the early test case for war games, and that war games in turn are already a form of war, right? The limit case of war games is war itself, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned splitting the atoms, and I was actually reading about the old Oppenheimer and the Manhattan Project, and how he felt, kind of like after he realized what went on. I have a question about the way that you present the city, the urban environment, as you actually say, we don't want to look at it as like ants and their, the way they develop or animal. But in a way, it's kind of like even that is an environment that wouldn't exist without us. It's not like sometimes we perceive technology as it just rain from the sky. It's magic is given us from the God, right? Truth is, it's an extension again of us. So that embodied, in my opinion, the vision of the city with us living inside it and using the technology, or before the technology, to create an environment that maybe in a way was always meant to be, just we didn't have the technology. So can you explain that?
Yeah, well, I think, thinking about, let's say, the urban revolution of the past the past 10,000 years, it's the agricultural revolution, but the gradual development of cities over this period that, are in a sense, like, relative to all the humans who have ever existed, they're not so rare. City dwelling is not so rare. But if you're just looking at the timeline of human existence, for most of human existence, humans have not lived in cities, right? There haven't been cities to live in. So cities are a weird new thing in some respect, just not quite as new as smartphones. And we have really learned quite well to take urban environments for granted. In fact, it's very easy to grow up in an urban environment and never once think like, whoa, how did things get this way, right? And it seems pretty clear that the direction of technology now is adding another layer to that, so that we're soon, once maybe my or our generation has died off, going to be in a world where augmentative technologies are going to be taken for granted, just like we now take cities for granted. And again, the city is also obviously an excrescence of human activity, even to the extent that different cities in different places in the world are built from different building materials depending on what's available in the geological composition of the region, right? So it's the natural world, but a bit rearranged, right? And that's part of why it's so easy for us to take it for granted. Yeah.
And it's good when you augment it. It's not so good when you distort it, as you were saying before, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And arguably, we're distorting our cities now too. Yeah. But in any case, I don't think the internet is intrinsically either augmentative or distortive. I think it's being used for distortive ends right now. I don't have the solution to change that. Someone smarter or someone better at policy than I am is going to have to come along to change it. But it's being neutral with regard to those two possibilities is better than it's being objectively distortive, I think.
And it's interesting. I wrote a piece a number of years back looking at when virtual reality takes over, we want to look back at the true reality. And I looked at it through the lens of nostalgia, that we'll value our reality before tech because of nostalgic purposes. What I'm hearing from you is we'll value it from a regret perspective.
Yeah. Maybe. Well, nostalgia is a complicated emotion, isn't it? It's a bit of regret, a bit of pain, bittersweet, but certainly I think we're already seeing ways in which we're trying to use technology to reconnect with the natural world. Apps that monitor our amount of communing with plants per day or whatever, and I'm sure we're going to see more and more of that. It's even if these fail to really mediate well between ourselves and our nature, their very existence is a development that shows that we want to go back.
So maybe as we wrap here, Justin, if you could, you've teased the heck out of me to want to dig into every page of this book. Maybe a quick description from you for who the book is for. Who'd you write it for? And maybe what's the lesson for them?
Yeah, it's a bit of a hybrid, a bit of a monster itself, in the sense that originally it was going to be a trade published book, then it was going to be probably more polemical, more rant-like. But then for various reasons, it ended up with my long-standing academic publisher, which is Princeton University Press. And because it was with a university press, I thought, I don't want to embarrass myself in front of my academic colleagues. I gotta show my scholarly chops here. But then, so that's the sense in which it's hybrid. It's both, or at least I'm trying to talk to two different publics at once, both scholarly and, anyone who uses the internet, which is to say basically anyone, not everyone in the world at this point, but everyone who can read. I'd say is and in any case, even if you're totally off the grid, and this is part of my argument, the internet is still shaping your social reality anyway, because again, increasingly, real world systems like, say, car share services and so on are being gamified on the same principles that were first given their trial run on social media, right? And we're going to see this more and more. Amazon warehouse workers are having their lives shaped by algorithmic principles that kind of, again, to use Norbert Wiener's term, jump the fence from the internet into the warehouse, right? So we're all on the internet now, right?
Yeah, well, I'm picturing somebody completely off the grid where they're
yeah,
they're getting the water from the well and growing their own food, and the only communications they have are with their neighbors.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that exists.
Being squeezed out, I'm sure.
Yeah, and obviously, throughout the developing world, you're not likely to find much of it there either, because cell phone usage kind of circumvented the personal computer, and people went straight from no telecommunications at all to cell phones and to texting. So if people want to go off the grid and go hardcore anarcho-primitivist, God bless them. That's certainly not what I'm advocating. Obviously, that's not certainly not what I'm living, because I'm sitting here talking to you two from Paris. So it would be pretty contradictory if I were.
Yeah, and as I'm going to make the last call for the book and everything, I want to add to that maybe if you're doing that, you're kind of being the distortion, because it seems to me that that's the direction where humanity is going. And so if you're going to try to break that, you're almost like you're swimming against. You're not going with the flow. So there's that too.
But the problem is nobody's going to know about it.
It's not affecting probably it's that drop in the ocean that is not going to affect everything else. Well, Justin, I love this conversation. Of course, I could go on forever, and
me
never.
Too. Yeah.
I would love to have you back and maybe pick on some more specific chapter of the book. I love this, and I don't know. I mean, I just want to invite people to read this, because for me, it's really timely in the way that we are re-embracing awfully, renewable energy, trying to say, hey, you know what, we kind of went off the wrong direction. Yeah. Maybe, because we're forced, because we always need to be forced as human, we need to go back and work in synergy with Mother Nature. So that may be the lesson. Others can be a little bit more philosophical, and other more practical. I think
I'm going to go back to gardening and try to avoid getting stung by a bee.
That's right. Put some gloves. That will be your antivirus or something like that. Absolutely, well, Justin, thank you so much. And
thank you. It was a real pleasure to talk to both of you, and I hope to come back again soon.
Thank you. Let's stay in touch. And for everybody listening, there will be link to the book, links to getting in touch with Justin, list on social media, and
the Wired article.
The Wired article, very interesting, and stay tuned. There'll be more on ITSP Magazine. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Bye-bye.
Devo unlocks the full value of machine data for the world's most instrumented enterprises. The Devo Data Analytics Platform addresses the explosion in volume of machine data and the crushing demands of algorithms and automation. Learn more at devo.com.
Blue Lava is the first business platform for CISOs to manage their security program. Blue Lava guides security leaders to effectively measure, optimize, and communicate their security program with confidence and ease in one platform. Learn more at bluelava.net. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Redefining Technology Podcast. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.